You know, it's amazing just how much places change with the passage of time. And in this programme, well, we're going to bring you a compilation, images from around Swindon of the past compared to those of today. We'll be taking a journey around many of the town's familiar locations and comparing the images from years gone by to those that we recognise from today. Many of the buildings still remain, providing a link with the past as all around has been transformed, from Regent Street to Market Street to the railway station and Fleet Street. The Swindon Society, and in particular Jean Allen, have provided us with those unique historic pictures from Swindon's past. So let's begin by comparing some of those with the pictures of today, the pictures that we recognise. Let's start in this area, the area around Bridge Street. With the help of the Swindon Society, we're stepping back in time to Swindon of yesteryear. A selection of images then and now from around the town. Our then picture takes us back to 1925 and the tram centre. The Oxford Hotel is to the left, Steddon Simpson's shoe shop is to the right. As we move forward in time, 74 years later, there have been a fair few changes. Steddon Simpson's now closed, the building shown in the throes of demolition. The road in which the trams once ran has now been pedestrianised. A constant flow of traffic now passes this side. Well, here again is a picture of the tram centre, this time a view from 1957. The building to the left where the Oxford Hotel once stood is the site of Burton's the Tailors. The shop was built in the 1930s. 42 years later, the building still stands. Having since been a toy shop, the location is once again the site of a public house. It now goes by the name of the Footplate and Firkin. Well, here's a location that certainly has a look of familiarity about it. We're looking along Canal Walk at the junction with Regent Street and Bridge Street in the 1960s. The building to the right houses the offices of the Inland Revenue and provides us with a reference point as we move forward 3 decades. The construction of the Brunel Centre and the David Murray John Tower dwarf the modern scene. Swindon's early pedestrianisation project still keeping the streets clear of motor vehicles. Well, it's the same location and a view of what is now Canal Walk taken back in 1957. The building to the left was the town's Lloyds Bank. The cottages to the right were some of the first to be demolished when the redevelopment of the town centre was given the go-ahead. 42 years pass and we're transformed into a thriving town centre. Where brick-built cottages once stood, there are now offices. The whole site is dwarfed by Wiltshire's second tallest building, the Murray John Tower. This is Bridge Street and a view from 1906. One of the corporation trams is approaching the tram centre. Behind it, the sign Public Benefit provides us with a reference point as we jump forward an incredible 93 years to 1999. Where there was once a wealth of family-run businesses, there's now a whole host of pubs, many of them run by major chains. The street has given way to pedestrians, and with them comes a whole range of clutter. Streetlights, telephone kiosks, rubbish bins and trees. Well, for our final picture, once again we find ourselves at the tram centre. We're looking east along Fleet Street at the junction with Bridge Street in the year 1905. The upstairs bay window to the left provides a reference point as the years fade away. 94 years have just disappeared. Where the crowds once shopped, the traffic now flows. In the distance, a sign of the times as the street appears to be dwarfed by one of the many office blocks. remembering the Swindon of yesteryear with the help of the Swindon Society, a glimpse of Swindon through the years. Now, one of the things that became clear whilst compiling the series is that many areas of the town have really undergone some pretty dramatic changes, whilst others appear to be completely unscathed by the passage of time. That's certainly true of our next selection of pictures as we take a closer look at the area around Fleet Street. With the help of the Swindon Society, we're stepping back in time to Swindon of yesteryear. A selection of images then and now from around the town. This is one of our oldest moments in time, captured forever. The picture was taken in the 1880s. We're looking east along Fleet Street. In the distance, the Sir Daniel Arms Public House and the Wesleyan Chapel. Over 110 years later, those buildings still survive. The Sir Daniel Arms later became the Sportsman Pub, and the chapel became the Great Western Railway Museum. The Sir Daniel Arms was built as a beer house in the 1880s, and named after the first locomotive, carriage and wagon superintendent of the Great Western Railway. There's an eerie feeling as the people in the picture disappear in our modern view of the same location. The once thriving hostelry is now boarded up with demolition not too far away. In this picture, the Sir Daniel Arms is an Usher's Brewery-owned pub. The windows line up to show that little has changed with the passing of time. The year is 1906, and the photograph records tram number 4 on its way to Rodbourne, passing the Wesleyan Methodist Chapel in Farringdon Road. In our modern-day view, the traffic flow has certainly changed dramatically. In fact, the road was widened at this point to cope with the increase. The former chapel is now the home of the town's Great Western Railway Museum. This is how Park Lane looked back in 1910. The road stretches out towards the Rodbourne Road bridges. No visible traffic on the roads apart from the occasional tram and the odd bicycle or two. The modern-day view, almost 90 years later, had to be taken from a slightly different angle because of a huge road sign. The roundabout at this location handles a constant flow of cars, lorries and buses. The park in Farringdon Road was for many years the focal point of the town's recreational pursuits. This 1930s view shows the greenhouses and rose gardens. During the war, air raid shelters were erected and static water pits dug. The park never really recovered its former popularity. Today the park is just one of many maintained by the Borough Council. 60 years later, the rose gardens are just a shade of their former glory. This is the outpatients department of the Great Western Hospital. It was used as the town's main accident and emergency department until PMH opened in 1960. As thoughts now turn to a new hospital for the town, it seems incredible that these were the facilities once on offer. The building was demolished when the road was widened, but thankfully the Milton Road complex, now known as the Health Hydro, is still a thriving part of the town's leisure facilities. This is Swindon in the 1930s. We're in Fleet Street at the junction with Bridge Street. In view are some of the town's early buses. The picture shows traffic flowing in both directions. In fact, so much has changed, it's difficult to visualise the location today. But some 60 years on, this is the modern view, very little providing us with a link to a time long since gone. Remembering the Swindon of yesteryear, with the help of the Swindon Society, a glimpse of Swindon through the years. Well, shops continue to feature in our next collection of then and nows. One of the buildings we're about to show is that of the market here in Market Square behind me, a traditional location for buying goods in the town. The new 10-star market caused a stir when it was first put up, the controversial building replacing the original brick-built structure. It still causes debate. There are those that love the brave new style used by the 90s designers and those that hate the form that they believe represents ridicule in the town. Well, either way, it provides us with a dramatic comparison as we're about to see. With the help of the Swindon Society, we're stepping back in time to Swindon of yesteryear, a selection of images then and now from around the town. We start with a view of the Regent's Place Gospel Hall taken in 1968. The hall was demolished just 2 years later in 1970 when the area was redeveloped. In the background stands the Savoy Cinema. It provides a reference point as 31 years just fade away. The building has gone and the land used for parking cars. The huge building of the former Savoy Cinema is now only partially used as the Savoy Public House. It's Commercial Road, and again the year is 1968, and once again traffic is travelling in both directions along the road. The old market's in the background. 31 years later, the shops have gone and are now used for parking cars. There's another office block in the distance, and the old market has disappeared to be replaced by a new building with an unusual design. Here's a view looking down Curtis Street, taken in 1913. The Rolleston Arms is to the left, Franklin's hardware store is to the right. Today, some 86 years later, the view is certainly recognisable. A whole row of streetlights now line Curtis Street. The constant flow of traffic makes this another busy junction. Meet the cutting crew of 1934 at Reeves & Co in Market Street. The building still survives today as the years roll by to 1999. Even today on the side of the building, the sign Reeves & Co can still be seen. And finally a view of the old market back in 1968. Originally built as an open-air market, a roof was added in 1902. The whole lot was demolished in the 1970s and the site used as a car park. Our 1999 view certainly heralds a new millennium, a big top theme adopted for the new tented market. The buildings to the left still stand, offering a view up towards Deacon Street. Remembering the Swindon of yesteryear, with the help of the Swindon Society, a glimpse of Swindon through the years. Well, let's move on to our next selection of pictures, and arguably the most important street in the town. For generations, Swindonians have been coming here to Regent Street to do their shopping. Many people were saddened with the closure of the town's original department store. The McElroy's name is familiar to generations of Swindon shoppers, but trends and attitudes to shopping have also changed, and the store was unable to compete with new shopping outlets. Well, the town centre's undergone some pretty dramatic changes through the years. Roads, streets and businesses have all disappeared, but throughout it all, Regent Street continues to be the heart of the town. With the help of the Swindon Society, we're stepping back in time to Swindon of yesteryear. A selection of images then and now from around the town. We head back to 1902. This is number 4 and 5 Regent Circus. Anywhere offered complete house furnishings, sewing machines, jewellery and musical instruments. The original building was demolished and a new one erected in its place. The windows to the left of Aware provide the reference point for today's picture. The Co-op Bank stands on the exact side. Once again, the established trees in the area prevent the original angle to be copied accurately. The year is 1955, and we're in Regent Street looking at the Rifleman's Hotel and the corner of the Savoy Cinema. 44 years later, both buildings still remain. The Rifleman's has had an extension built on the side and is no longer run by the Stroud Brewery. The former cinema is now also a pub, still retaining the Savoy name. This 1950s view of Regent Street shows the store of F.W. Woolworth & Co. The clock of the jewellers James Walker shows 3 o'clock, and just a handful of cars are parked in the main street. The modern view is taken from a slightly different position, whilst the demolition of McIlroy's continued. The original building and clock may have disappeared, but a timepiece still hangs in the same position in our 1999 view. A 1963 view of Regent Street looking north. To the left is the Anstis store. Our point of reference for the up-to-date view is the facade of Marks & Spencer's in the mid-distance. Today, many of the original shops have gone. The town's Brunel shopping centre now occupies much of this location. Here's another 1960s view of Regent Street. It shows some of the many pinnacles on the buildings, including those of the old classic cinema. As we move forward in time, some of those pinnacles can still be seen. At the time the picture was taken, McIlroy's was still being demolished. The family-run shops, all now owned by major chains. Morse's Limited was a familiar name in the town. Their store has long since gone, but the building remains and is still in use to this day. From the 1950s through to the 1990s. W.H. Smith occupy this building. The modern storefront provides a real contrast of time some 40 years later. Remembering the Swindon of yesteryear, with the help of the Swindon Society, a glimpse of Swindon through the years. Well, here's a building that local people hoped would have changed dramatically across the years. It's the so-called temporary building housing the town's library. 40 years ago, the library was set up in porter cabins with the promise that a permanent library would be set up eventually. The evidence, of course, speaks for itself, and there is a growing feeling amongst local people that the town now deserves a permanent building to house the town's library service. Well, this location features in our next set of pictures. In fact, Regent Circus is one of those areas of the town that's certainly seen its fair share of changes. See if you can spot those familiar locations and the changes that have taken place. With the help of the Swindon Society, we're stepping back in time to Swindon of yesteryear. A selection of images then and now from around the town. A familiar building to Swindonians, the Town Hall with its four-faced clock. This 1950s view is of the rear of the building, showing an area originally used for parking. Today the library occupies this side. The trees still stand around it. Once again, this is a part of the town that has witnessed an incredible increase in the amount of traffic. This 1960s view shows the town's head post office. It also shows traffic flying before pedestrianisation and before the road was widened. The building to the left behind the trees provides us with a focal point. When the Wyvern Theatre was built and Theatre Square created, the post office was moved to a new site. This picture, taken in 1953, shows decorations at the rear of the Town Hall for the coronation of Queen Elizabeth II. Look closely at the chimney pots of the Town Hall as they disappear in an age of central heating. The modern view shows what was supposed to have been a temporary library building. The talk still continues on finding a new home for the town's library service. Well, this must rate as the most sorely missed building in Swindon, a 1973 view of the Baptist Tabernacle. It was built in 1886 and became a victim of the town's modernisation. The building to the left is the focal point for our view, taken 23 years later. And from a slightly different location because of the trees that have now grown. It shows the Pilgrim Centre that now stands on this side. Regent Circus is the location for the town's cenotaph, a memorial for those that gave up their lives for their country. It was erected in 1920 in what was the middle of the road. Our view some 70 years later shows the cenotaph unchanged. The pedestrianisation of the area has played a major part in securing its safety from road traffic. Recently, railings were erected around it. Remembering the Swindon of yesteryear, with the help of the Swindon Society, a glimpse of Swindon through the years. Well, behind me, what was the main entrance to the Great Western Railway Works here in Swindon. Now, the railways in the town have seen some of the most dramatic changes. The town was once famed for its railway works, producing some of the world's most highly acclaimed examples of railway traction. It closed to the dismay of the workforce in the mid-1980s. It ended a 150-year connection with the town that owes its massive expansion to the iron wheel and the might of the Great Western Railway. Well, our final collection of pictures isn't about railways, but it does focus on the area around the town's main railway station. With the help of the Swindon Society, we're stepping back in time to Swindon of yesteryear. A selection of images then and now from around the town. This is a view of Wellington Street taken 33 years before our modern view, back in 1967. It shows the wooden railway mission to the right, and in the background construction is underway on what was to become the Debenham building. In fact, construction in this area continued at quite a pace. Today, the whole view has been transformed. Just a couple of the town's many office blocks dwarfing the scene. It's 1900 and a horse-drawn taxi waits outside the Queen's Tap public house opposite the railway station. The Queen's Tap was one of the town's first public houses and still survives, as we can see in our view taken almost 100 years later. The mode of transport provides the biggest change between the two pictures. Here's a 1950s view of the front of Swindon Junction Station. It shows a Royal Mail van waiting to pick up mail. As we're about to see, the facade disappeared in the 1970s when the station was completely modernised. Another of the town's office blocks was built in its place. The station now occupies just the lower floors. A different world in this 1970s view of Cheltenham Street looking north. On the corner of this street was the popular Beale's Cafe. Today there's no connection with the past. There are no longer any inhabitants of Cheltenham Street. There are no longer any houses standing in the street. The area was very run down and is one of the places most changed in the modern Swindon of today. This is the site of Swindon's first electricity works in Corporation Street. The view is from 1910. The chimney stretched up 150 feet into the air. It was originally built to power the trams. Watch the loading door in the side of the building as we move forward in time. Almost 80 years later, it's a window in the main administration block used by Thamesdown Transport. The chimney is long since gone. Remembering the Swindon of yesteryear with the help of the Swindon Society. A glimpse of Swindon through the years. Well, there we are, that's just about it. As we put this programme together, everyone is looking forward to the next millennium, and who knows what changes that will bring. One thing though is for certain, it will bring changes. And who knows, the Swindonians of the future may well look back on the pictures of today with a tinge of nostalgia.